made the mistake when we moved out. He's selling completely.
Claire Wade asks, lately I'm finding mini groups with 4 to 5 people a rather more efficient and enjoyable way of working. I'm suggesting these projects, that projects comprise more smaller groups, which works my client's budget and me harder. The outcomes have been very productive. What do the panel think? Sheila?
I think you start with, what am I trying to find out? How is the best way to go about it? That might be smaller groups, which are fine. It's a very sensitive subject. People you need to delve into a lot. It makes a lot of sense to have small groups. It just depends on. It's a matter of thinking very carefully about what you need to find out, how's the best way to do it, and then structuring the research. It goes in that order, in a sense. So, and that might be that you say, okay, it's going to be one-to-ones, or it can be sort of accompanied shopping, or whatever it is you want to do. So, I mean, start with that, what do I want to find out, and then build the research around it, really.
But perhaps behind Claire's question is, we're in a bit of a straitjacket that says group discussions have got
For
8
years
to 10
and
people.
years we had that. I think we've we've chucked that away now.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know, silence now.
So,
I mean, we need to think a lot about the way we do it,
I
rather than
certainly
automatically.
don't feel there's any straitjacket that you have a certain number. I completely endorse the point that as a client-side researcher, it's our job. I guess it's the unique position we're in is that we're close to the business. So we're able to take what the questions, what the strategic issue is that we're trying to solve. And you guys as experts will look into your skills and expertise to help us understand what's the best solution to that.
Okay.
Might qualitative research, might be groups with 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows? But you'll be the judge according to the types of customers and the issue that's at hand to help understand that. I don't think it has to be 8 people, it could be 2 people, 3. It really depends on a bespoke basis.
Okay.
But I wouldn't agree with what seems to be the premise of the question that mini groups or smaller groups are a preferable methodology. I agree completely with Sheila. You know, which is whatever the issue is and what's going to be the best way to tackle it.
But Claire seems to be implying that as a default, she's perhaps getting more out of a group of 5 people in front of her.
It does depend on the topic.
But I think it would depend on the topic. You know, if you're wanting to get a reaction to things, or you're wanting to have, you know, a full group or a bigger number of people because you want more people giving more input, then I don't think you would get that out of a 4 or 5 people group. So really, I'd say it goes back to what is the issue.
Yeah, and I mean, it may be that you have conflict groups, it might be that you have repeat groups, that they go away and do something in between. I mean, all sorts of things are possible, but I think the most important thing is you think about what you're doing and what you're trying to find out and structure it accordingly. Really.
Okay, thank you. Giles, anything to add on that? Agree with everything. Yeah. Any comments from the floor? What are people experiencing in the audience? Anyone want to chip in?
There is a money thing, which is that I think clients do, I'm sure it's a nice people or a bit, but there are clients that make the assumption they'll get at least 8 respondents in the group, and they feel probably internally quite comforted by that we're going to get that many people. So I think as a person selling research, you have to have a little bit of an argument on your side to say, do you know what, it's going to be much better with 4 or 5 on this subject.
But Claire seems to be saying, well, I'll talk to the same number of people, but I'd like to divide them up.
Oh, I see. Gosh, that's very magnificent.
I think as a moderator, I think I think groups of smaller groups, and my experience of smaller groups is when people haven't turned up, and they've ended up in smaller groups.
Yeah.
But,
that's the risk.
But I think they're easier to manage, in that it's easier to get more participation. I mean, by definition almost, but it's easier to get that person who's going to hang back in the group to join in.
Yeah.
So I think there is probably a case to saying you get more action.
All right. I think that's true. I think smaller groups are easier to do, and I think clients often like bigger numbers because they think they're getting better value for money. But I still would go back to saying you use them when, you know, whatever the issue is.
Right.
I think what she's implying is 3 groups of 8, don't do that, do 6 groups of 4.
Yeah.
That's just still got the same number of people.
Yeah, yeah.
It's just that she's finding it more efficient if she actually does 6 groups rather than 3 groups, even if technically she's spoken to 24 people.
Yeah.
That's the premise. If that's what she finds more efficient and enjoyable, her words, not mine, then that's fantastic. If you can get that breadth across a large number of groups,
Yeah.
if it allows you to give the breadth that you need and also allows you to go deeper, then that, as a client, I'm not going to complain about that.
Well, clearly,
as Sheila says, it's about what you're trying to achieve.
she'll certainly have more talking time for the project as a whole. And I'm sure, as a Scottish member, she's costed it very thoughtfully as well.
I think there's a wider question about the industry questioning accepted principles and accepted practice. Why do we not like repeat respondents? Why do we insist on having people who haven't done a group in so much time? Why do we not like clients sitting in, or lots of clients sitting in and participating in the group? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just think there's a broader question that we ought to be questioning some of these things that we take as read as Qual researchers, and thinking about, actually, given where we are now, which is 40 years on, 50 years on from where Qual started, things have changed, and are some of those principles still valid?
Let's move on to a more general question from Rosie Campbell, who asks, I'm very optimistic about the future for skilled qualitative research. Can the panel advise on new areas of work that they see developing? So what new areas of work do we think that qualitative research might be able to help with? Have you any thoughts on that on the client side?
So when I was thinking through this, whether it's new work or not, we'll see, but trying to get customers closer to the real decision makers in the business is a constant challenge. Trying to get time with people, attending fieldwork is difficult enough with our directors. Getting them to sit through an hour debrief is tricky as well. But ways that you can create interesting and informative ways to get them to actually see customers talking about stuff, I think is really important. Any way you can help to do that, be it better quality editing and production of clips, work very well in terms of customers telling stories about particular products, brands and services, work really well. Helping us find ways of getting real customers into strategic meetings. Some companies have been successful in doing that. Really ways that you can just bring the issues to life through a customer's eyes in a way that a second-hand reading of a PowerPoint document is never going to do for a director. So it's anything that you can do to help do that. So I don't think it's necessarily a new challenge, but it's becoming, I think, increasingly important as speaking client companies or anywhere, just to have time to process the amount of information that they need to do. And research is one of those competing things that they have on their time. So, and I think in my experience, the quality of visual output that agencies produce, I think probably is a little bit behind people's thinking. And it does come at a cost to get decent quality output. I don't deny that. But I think it's a challenge to us all at start projects to go, what's the best output that's going to really create impact with senior, or the person that is the senior, most decision-making person in the project. And if that is something beyond a typical workshop or PowerPoint deck or whatever that would be, then it's worth thinking about that. So that would be my challenge.
So it's short and quality information.
We're actually just about to come to an end of a piece of Qual work and discussing through with the agency how we get it disseminated across a multitude of people. And I work for a trade body, so I don't have one client, which is one marketing director. I've got 20 marketing directors as my client. And so, as Richard said, getting them to turn up to a debrief is going to be nigh on impossible. Sending them a PowerPoint deck, which they don't read, or they don't get the nuance of what has been identified, So what we've agreed is we're going to have a facilitated workshop run by the agency, whereby they don't present 40-odd slides of all their findings, including methodology. They present no more than about 3 or 4 slides of the key themes, supplemented with some clips, because we're getting the consumer to do some self-filming, as you would in the video industry. It then becomes a workshop as to what to do next with those senior stakeholders, and they've all bought in to turning up.
Right.
Whether or not they turn up is a different matter. That's my challenge.
But they're
is to ensure.
enthusiastic at this
But
stage.
they're all enthusiastic
Because it's a workshop.
because it's a workshop.
And presumably the detailed findings are there if they
The
want.
detailed findings will go to their research manager if they've got one, or their marketing people. But it's research. It's deep. It is a deep. But basically, they're coming to a debrief. But I called it a workshop,
Yeah.
and they're going to turn up. And I promised them there's only 5 slides, not 40 slides.
Okay.
Which means that I would have had to do the work with the agency to identify the themes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
That sounds eminently sensible. I can see that working. Michael, you any comments?
I was wanting to ask a question of the clients on the panel. That it seems amazing to me that people running businesses and the senior decision makers don't want to, it's really hard to get them to come along to hear what their customers have to say. So that's question 1, but in our first question, question 2 is this a reflection on how the esteem that they hold qualitative research in? So first question is, I would think if I was running a business, I'd absolutely want to know what my customers have to say. So why is it so hard to get them there?
quite often it's difficult even getting heads of marketing. I mean, in my previous life, it's been difficult to get the senior marketing, even as not the initiating internal client, but other even middle level stakeholders. It's been very difficult to get along, and quite why I don't know. And I remember saying on the panel a couple of years ago, again, if they want to find out something about what their customers are saying, they'll either go direct to the customer and get the salesperson to take them to visit a customer, or they'll pick up the phone to McKinsey and say, I want to know what my customers are thinking. And then the first thing McKinsey do is they'll come and chat to the research team, take all of our gold and then present it back.
Why, can I ask, why are McKinsey, I have a vested interest because I have a daughter working there. Why is it that McKinsey have taken over that role of organisational change?
Trust.
Why did we lose it then? Because when I don't know, 30 years ago, we did a lot of work in organisations. And it seemed as if the management consultants came in and they sort of took over that territory that qualitative researchers were actually doing.
It's the old adage of no one got shot for buying IBM.
Yeah.
So if you're a CEO or a CFO and you've got some multi-million-pound decisions to make within your company, you want to have the reassurance of your peers and stakeholders that you're making the right decision. And if you can say, well, I brought in McKinsey, or whichever one of the big 4 or 5 consultancies, if you can say that you brought in those people, they recommended the strategic direction.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember this is being filmed, but you've got someone to blame.
Yeah.
And it's also the networking. The McKinseys of this world are very good at networking.
Yeah.
So they're at CBI events, they're at Institute of Directors events, they're in with senior stakeholders, they're in with the chief executive all the time. And we would like, within the insight profession within clients, we would like the phone call to come to us first, not
but
to go to
that did happen.
McKinsey.
You see, what I'm interested in is, at one time there were the large accountancy firms which sort of then looked around and thought, where are we going to go next? Management consultancy. So they had the money, they had the status, they went in there. And so the work that we were doing as quantitative researchers in the BTs and the other large organisations who would come saying, can you do some research in our organisation? That sort of went. Is there a possibility of getting that back again? Because I think it's a fantastic
let me bring us back to the
solution
first
isn't, the solution might not be Qual research. The solution is strategic consultancy from a multiple of streams of evidence.
Okay, I sense we've drifted a fair bit from the initial question, but
We've got
I was
20.
I was keen to let that run because it sounded an interesting stream of ideas developing. Rosie, any supplementary thoughts? You heard initially from
Actually,
Richard.
no, not really. I mean, in a way, I wanted to ask a question, and I think I sent it to you on the email, but I think sometimes when we have these kind of forums, I mean, AQR's the same, MRS is the same, it can become a bit of a moan fest, you know, and you'll go, oh, I know, isn't it dreadful, and the clients don't understand us, and it's all going down the pan, and we're going to be taken over by widgets, and da-da-da. So I wanted to be upbeat, because I think, you know, probably at the top end, you know, sort of the later end of my career in Qual, I'm looking back thinking, actually, it's been good fun, it's been a great job to do, I still enjoy it, and I feel a lot of people are the same, and we should be sort of celebratory. And that I wanted to be kind of like stepping out new exciting stuff. And I kind of, in a way, I feel a bit upset if the answer is to fight McKinsey, because that seemed to be the answer 10 years ago. But I do agree with Sheila. I feel like the stuff that's on offer now, you know, I can't get awfully excited compared to, I feel, maybe we were very lucky. We did an awful lot of much more meaty, more strategic kind of work years ago than we seem to now.
Does Richard's thought help you, do you think, in terms of
yes, it does.
cutting through and getting attention?
I think that thing of, you know, and I think a lot of research companies, probably not us particularly, but a lot did get very sort of experientially and do a kind of, you know, my job is to be a kind of conduit between customer and client, therefore I'm going to let them get a full experience. I mean, in all that youth research 15, 20 years ago, that was what was going on when they took clients clubbing and they said, oh God, this is how we should market Drury now. And then they took films, and all of that stuff's got more immediate. So I do think that is a good idea.
Okay. Which was prompted by a comment by one of our members who said that several of his clients have been telling him recently, quote, I'll just get an 80% answer, that's 80% of my information needs, in 10 minutes via a Google Analytics style survey. I don't need to spend 6 weeks on a research project anymore. So I just wondered, perhaps especially on the client side, what your reaction was to this possible threat, this move by the likes of Google to seemingly take over our industry. Sorry to spring that on you, but Richard, have you got any immediate thoughts on that?
In my network of people that I'm involved with, that isn't the conversation that I hear. But once again, if you guys are hearing that, then it clearly must be going on.
Well, someone has heard that apparently from a couple of clients.
I don't have experience of doing 10-minute Google Analytics to get 80% of the answer. I'm not familiar with that.
Do you see a space in your organisation for these very fast turnaround Google-based
so is the space of
feedback?
fast turnaround project? Yes. And if there's the methodology that's robust enough to give a good answer on that, then I'm sure we would be open to that as clients. Is that Google Analytics or something else? Well, who knows? But
Andrew, what is Google Analytics exactly? Or even
You're not allowed to ask me questions.
Does they mean a survey monkey?
It's a survey.
I think they just do like survey monkey.
Yeah, and so it's a quick survey, quick and dirty survey.
But it's Google taking over a space of running fast
Can I just
turnaround.
explain what it is? It's not Google Analytics, it's Google Consumer Surveys.
Thank you, Arthur, you're quite right.
That's okay. It's a system whereby Google can find for you very quickly a very high quality sample of people for your piece of research. There are several white papers that they've written, most of which obviously will point towards the fact that their method of sampling is better than conventional sampling, and certainly a lot better than online sampling. And the main thing is that there are more and more of these tools becoming available where a client, let's say they're doing some creative development work, they're looking to go into mass media advertising, whatever they're doing, they haven't got 6 weeks to wait, which is our normal sort of turnaround time. They've got 3 days. So what do? Do they say, oh, well, we'll just sort of go with gut, we'll go with that one, or do they do something which may be an 80% situation, and there are plenty of tools out there.
The comment was 80% is good enough.
Yeah, so both quant and qual tools that you can buy into and cost-effectively reasonable sampling and so on. So they're out there.
Okay, let me see if there's any other comments on the client side. Giles, what do you, any thoughts about this movement?
Well, I have heard people say that exactly this, that I'd rather spend significantly less and get it much quicker and be 80% right than wait a long time and be 99% right. It's a reality as an industry, and I putting myself in that industry, we've got to provide those people who've got to make those decisions with the evidence to the timescales they need. And if that means sometimes providing, my words, quick and dirty stuff, but it helps them on one hand, but on the other hand it's also ensuring that when there is perhaps a little bit more high risk, then it's better for them to go into a bit more depth and to get the 99% solution.
Yeah. Okay.
If you were going to be launching, a product which you think are going to have a revenue target of £20 million, you're not going to spend £5,000 and 10 minutes on an 80% solution. You're going to invest in something more robust. So, for these projects which are, as I say, quick and dirty, they've got to be for the smaller decisions. That actually then might grow the market rather than contract it.
Right. Okay. Well, that's an interesting thought. Question out here in the audience.
Well, it's just a statement. There was talking to Arthur's point. Before Arthur's point, there's actually a company called Gutcha who are advertising all over the internet at the moment. If you go into any Google or into LinkedIn, their adverts appear all over the place.
Right. Okay.
Dare search it on Google because you'll be getting adverts on them for the rest of your life.
So I guess what we're
That's their business
concluding
model, 3-day turnaround.
it's horses for courses, and
But this is not new at all, because 20 years ago people ran a telephone survey and fought back 2 days later.
Yeah.
It's not new.
all right, good. Well,
Could I just pick up on Giles's point about quick and dirty? It's an expression I really don't like. Quick, yes. The thing that makes it dirty is when there is no expertise involved. There is no research expertise. That's what makes it dirty. If someone were to come on to one of us and say, look, 3-day turnaround time on this particular assignment, and we had these tools available to us, it wouldn't be quick and dirty, it would be quick.
Yeah.
It might be a little dusty. But that's all. And that's what makes the difference, because a lot of us, I'm sure, have seen some clients, obviously not the respected audience here, but some clients having a go at it themselves and making a complete arse of it, and then trashing things like SurveyMonkey. Say, oh, SurveyMonkey doesn't work. SurveyMonkey is a brilliant tool, so long as
in the right hands.
Yes.
the researcher is doing their job.
I think what Giles was doing was just using a familiar phrase, and
I'm an old client of his. He's still protecting me. But no, I mean you're right, and it's in the wrong hands. It's the people who don't know what they're doing. If they're using this, then it will be buyer being aware.
let me move the. We're going to have a bit more fun on the next question, because we're talking about general themes and career experiences. And 2 questions here are linked. Firstly, from Karen Cooper, who asked the panel, what piece of research made the most difference to you or your company, and why. And I'll put in the same bracket as a second one from Steve Hallam, and this is an old chestnut. What is the most embarrassing research-related situation you have found yourselves in? Who shall I pick first? Michael, you can try.
Okay. Well, both mine are online related, and the first one, the interesting one, was back in 1995. We did, I think, was the world's first online focus groups for the Daily Telegraph, which may have been a strange thing to do, but the Daily Telegraph launched the first online newspaper in the UK, which a lot of people may not know, and most of the people who worked at the Daily Telegraph when they did it didn't know. And secondly, no one knew what the internet was in 1995. So for us to actually be doing online focus groups about what was then called the electronic telegraph, and running focus groups in America, Australia, in the UK, we recruited them all from this electronic newspaper, which by definition was global, was absolutely extraordinary, and it did feel very much to me, I'm a bit of a computer dope really, but I did for some accidental reason got into a chat room in 1995 on a CompuServe, and was absolutely convinced that in one form or another I was looking at the future. I didn't think this was a passing phase, and this is a comment broader than just qualitative research. But to be able to, in 1995, have our client at his desk out at Canary Wharf, for us to be in our office and to be sort of essentially talking to a group of people in America or Australia, felt absolutely and utterly extraordinary.
So tell us something really embarrassing.
And the second embarrassing one was also internet related, was when AOL first came to this country, because I'd somehow then got a bit of a reputation as being the online man, and so they were trying to work out what should this is their very original website, so it probably is about 97 or something. And so we've got everyone in the studio, all the AOL people, all these computer geeks, everything. We've got these different models, different designs of home pages and things. And for some unknown reason, so everyone's there, the respondents are there, the clients are there, and all the icons, suddenly we go online, which was dial-up in those days, all the icons turn into pornographic images in a viewing studio with everybody. And of course, I have no idea how that happened. I've never understood how it happened. I mean, and we did recommend that that's probably the homepage they ought to use. And they would have made a lot more money.
I imagine you've dined out on that a few times.
I have a few times, yes.
Good. Giles, what about you? What are you prepared to tell us?
Well, the piece of work that made the most difference, it wasn't a piece of qualitative research, it was a piece of data analysis. This was done probably about 14 years ago, when I was working at Royal Mail. We were looking, two of us were tasked with doing a piece of work which involved putting together qualitative research, quant research, and then also a lot of panel data. We had Royal Mail, a very infamous, I'm not sure if you ran it or not, panel diary that about people's behaviour, and coming to the conclusion that Royal Mail as an organisation we were then doing trend forecasting, and we came to the conclusion that Royal Mail would no longer be a mail business that delivered parcels. It would completely flip and it would become a parcels business that delivered letters, which would make a fundamental difference, change in business strategy, from the point of view of, I mean, literally from everything. It would even impact the fact that we would then get rid of bicycles, because you can't deliver lots of big lumpy things on bicycles. You'd have to deliver them in vehicles, and if you have to buy more vehicles, you'd therefore, because you're sorting large, big, lumpy things rather than tiny little letters, it means you've got to have an estate with a buildings estate where all the buildings are about 5 times, if not 10 times, the size that we currently had. And that was a fundamental piece of research, even if it was data analysis. I'm afraid it wasn't involved.
All right. And are you prepared to tell us something embarrassing?
Well, the most embarrassed I've been was before I even got a job, I was travelling in Australia, doing a sort of round the world backpacking, and I got a temp job with a market research agency, knocking on doors and doing telephone calls and hall tests and street surveys and things like that. So I was an interviewer. And the first project I had was that I had to interview very young ladies, and I was a young man at the time, interview very young ladies about, I can't even remember what the subject was, I just remember the demographic I was after. And then having to ask at the end of it for their telephone number for checkbacks. And going back into the office on the very first time I'd done this and saying it was really great that I got all these phone numbers of all these young ladies, and being very embarrassed to be told that I wasn't allowed to use any of them.
Okay, thank you very much, Sheila.
Oh, right. Well, I was digging around thinking, well, what's a piece of research that made a difference? And I sort of, I just picked up one which was in 1984, which was the day after we set up the year after we set up the company. And we were trying to think, how do we sort of make ourselves known? How do we sort of do? And we decided that the area that really at that time wasn't research was money. And people's, I mean, it sounds really strange now that there was very little research going on at that time about money, the meaning, the psychology of money. So we took this project on and created it and wrote a sort of very large, very hefty document on it, and then sold it at a sort of for a very small amount. And on the back of that, it probably, I don't know, would you agree with this, Rosie?
Yeah,
Sort of
yeah,
launched the company, a lot of work on the back of it, and then we did a quant version of it. And so yeah, that was it.
Okay.
People still remember.
And I can't imagine there are many embarrassing moments in your
I'm not
career.
sure I want to see
You can't tell that one.
You've got to tell it now.
Well,
Okay, I've got to be
you're
brave.
there,
Right,
practically
yeah.
there.
This was some groups we were doing a long time ago, I hasten to add. And it was for Quaker, who were quite a traditional organisation at that time, probably still are now. And we were doing something on sugar puffs, and on the honey monster. Remember some of that advertising. And the client had said, right, we want to change the nature of the honey monster and make him more sort of up to date, because he was quite sort of like a sort of teenager at that time. I don't know, some of you probably can't remember that far back. And he was, his hair was all over the place and he was very sort of messy. And they decided that they wanted to turn him into more of a sort of 007 sort of character, which was a bit implausible to start with, but we were going along with it. And I remember we had 12 groups, and it was just on the run up to Christmas. And it was a really big decision for them, because the honey monster has been loved for centuries almost. And so we had, I don't know, maybe a dozen people in the viewing lab, including, I think it was the MD, or if not, the marketing director, somebody very senior. So I'm there with this group of sort of, robust middle-aged women who found all of this very funny to start with, which it was, and I said, well, how should we dress him, what should he look like? And so they playing along with this as they do. And then they said, well, the trouble is his hair is just so messy, we'll have to do something with it, it's all over the place, we'll have to change that, And so I said, well, how do we change the hair? Well, it has to be this, that, and the other. I said, so basically, what we need to do is to give him a blowjob. And as I said it, I meant blow dry, obviously. I just froze, and I thought, I can't believe I said this. And they were quiet for a minute, and then they just creased up. I mean, just completely. And so I had to try and finish the group with this. And of course, every 2 minutes the bitch Anyway, I got through to the end, and I thought, oh my God, I've got to go back into I'm going to go back and face them. How am I going to do this? So I'm there, and I go back in, and there's about 12 of them, and nobody's saying a word. It's dead silent. I'm thinking, I just want to die. I just want to do anything, get me out of here. And so the senior bloke's there, and he waited for about 5 minutes, and I just stood there at the doorway thinking, oh, this is the worst. And And they said, well, if that's what it takes, we better do it.
Thank
But
you very
it
much.
was just, we never got any more work from them.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Richard, what have you got to tell us?
So what's the thing that's made the most difference? I was thinking what's the thing that gave a lot of satisfaction. So I'm sure none of you are old enough to remember an organisation called Midland Bank, which is one of the, you're far too young to remember that, was one of the financial institutions on the high street. So at the time, Midland Bank was called the Listening Bank, some of you might remember.
But didn't.
Well, let's see. I'll tell the story, and then you'll be the judge of that. So we're working with young adults aged between 16 and 18, trying to understand how we could help them with their financial matters. There was a really strong insight that came through that they really wanted to become better at managing their money, but were a little bit careless and uncomfortable at times, and weren't as sophisticated as adults become in terms of managing every penny to make sure they didn't go overdrawn. And that was a real worry for them, because at the time, maybe it still happens, that penny overdrawn, you were getting kids being charged with 30, 40, 50 pounds worth of charges straight away, which was really penal and felt really wrong from a customer point of view. So we've done the work, which was a very strong customer insight. Went, can you just give us a little bit of leeway here? Can you just give us a bit of a buffer? So that if we just by mistake on a Friday night go to a service and take £10 out and go £3 overdrawn, that's not going to suddenly cost us the equivalent of a speeding ticket these days. And to try and have that debate with a credit and risk department in the 1980s was no mean feat. To try and people never kind of heard of market research, let alone about customer insight, which kind of almost didn't exist in those days. To try and convince them that to find a way of this not being an overdraft as such, but it was just a temporary thing that would be reconciled and changed within a week. So it was a real challenge, and we managed to get that through with the help of the agency that worked with us. And so that was really satisfying to see that product actually come to life and really help kids in their money management, who hopefully would then go on to become the current account holders of the future. So yes, we did this.
Good, good. Now what about the
Did those
embarrassment?
kids who did the research with, did they go on to become traders at HSBC?
Very good. Any embarrassing little anecdote?
Embarrassing field work trip I've ever been on was, again, when I was working for HSBC, we were doing some work with farmers, trying to understand what would be the best financial products to offer to them. And I went completely underdressed to a day out with farmers, which put new meaning to the phrase, it's a shit job, but someone's got to do it. So always take what is with you.
Very good. Okay, thank you for indulging us in that. A broader question from Ben Lovejoy is, if we as a panel had to guess what we'll be doing differently in research 5 years from now, what would that one thing be? Who would like to start? Giles? What one big thing do you think we'll be noticing in 5 years' time?
I have a hope, and it's the hope that Sheila had earlier, is that the phone is, when the CEO knows there's an issue that they want the answer to, they pick up the phone to the head of insight or head of business intelligence, if it's an internal, or their strategic research partner if they want to go outside of their organisation. So that's one hope. And then the other hope is the fact that all the, at least all the major companies, or the FTSE 100 companies and other large institutions, have a chief insight officer on their board, in the same way as they've got an H. If you look at the makeup of the board is made up of the assets of the organisation. So you have IT, you have people in terms of HR, you have finance, you have those assets. Many boards still don't even have a marketing director, which is responsible for two of the assets which provide competitive advantage, which are the brand and insight. And I would hope that in 5 years' time, those organisations have either got a chief marketing officer on the main board, or they've even got a chief insight officer on the main board.
Okay, but is that more of a hope or
No,
an
it's a hope.
expectation?
I think there will be a few that will have that.
Okay.
So
Well,
I think the expectation is that there'll be a few have that, but they'll be the trendsetters.
Okay, thanks. The question's obviously trying to predict what will be different in 5 years' time. What do you think, Mike? Have you got any real hunches?
Yeah, I think it's going to be about technology, and including in qualitative research, and I think probably a lot to do with mobile technology and sort of consumer behaviour being self-reported, but back into some sort of. I know some of that's going on already, but I think you're going to have all sorts of ways of being in the situation with people. So yeah, I think I think it will be a lot to do with that, and that will throw up, going back to Robin's question, that around how that is all used. I mean, my earlier answer was about qualitative framework, but I think it will throw up quite a lot of challenges, even within the qualitative framework.
Do you see that as being all the more challenging for our organisation, the smaller
Independent researcher?
Yeah, the smaller independent researcher.
Yes, I do, but I still think, I do.
The use of mobile perhaps plays more to the
bigger company,
to the big organisation.
Yes, I think so, and I think there will be a lot of that. I mean, I think a lot of because you can consume, you can be with the consumer when they're doing whatever you want to know about. My hope, and I do want to get my hope, is that the qualitative research in 5 years' time has regained its place as the premier people or profession that businesses and organisations turn to when they want to understand people. And I would hope the clients would want to use professionally qualified researchers who probably are accredited by somebody.
Right.
Because I also think, because I think in fact, if that doesn't happen, in 5 to 10 years' time, we may not even be having this conversation, because I think qualitative research may quite easily just dissipate.
Oh, okay. What do you guys think about, well, perhaps Michael's comment and the wider question of what policy?
I agree with Mike's comment about technology, but I look at it from a different point of view. I think more and more companies will start to harness the power of the databases, use customer analytics to aid their decision making, and I can see research working in tandem alongside to add the colour and the meaning to what's coming out of databases would be something that will happen probably quicker than 5 years' time, but that'll be my big hope.
Okay, so far wider use of customer databases. Sheila, any predictions?
I'm completely there with Mike, really. But the thing I scribbled down was, this is hope. This is hope. I would like us to have chartered status. And I would like, I don't like accreditation, it's too much of being private schools, but charter, to me, feels like it's got sort of, a bit of gravitas to it. And as an established career progression, I think we need to get, all of those bits like, continuous professional development, people screening that, people sort of supervising people when they start for a certain number of years. All of those things need to be put in place and to make it a profession. It's not a profession. And I just don't think we'll ever have the money or probably the inclination to do it. And I think that if we were going to do it, it would have to be under the auspices of the MRS. And I think that would mean that the MRS would have to change the whole nature of this organisation.
So it really puts the pressure on them.
So, but I think it has to be the MRS. I think they're the overriding organisation for me. That the rest of us sort of slot in.
And they've made the decision not to go for charter status now.
I don't know that.
I thought they made the decision that they'd stop that.
Is it? Oh, I didn't know that yet.
But obviously you can't do it.
No, it's a big task. So that's what I'd like.
Do you see that happening in 5 years' time, Ed?
Not idea.
No, I think our feedback from the MRS is that whilst that was the ambition, they've backtracked from that.
But it's not cancelled. It's still their ambition.
Yeah, but on a very long back burner.
Okay. On the wider question of what we're going to be doing fundamentally differently in 5 years' time, would anyone else in the audience like to chip in on this? Any comments that we haven't already heard? Andy?
I think if Unilever are so concerned about research quality, they might take the trouble to join Aura. At least one or other of their brands, of which there may be 30. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
It seems bizarre to me.
All right. Anyone else? Yeah, Arthur.
Sorry, what did you have in your pocket 10 years ago?
That's a rather personal question.
That's a great question. You had a mobile phone, and it was a phone which was mobile. What have you got in your pocket today?
A computer.
You have a computer that's connected to the world. That is where the future will be for an awful lot of what we do.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Mitch.
I just wanted to pick up on the point about better use of databases information. I think probably in common with lots of people here, I've been in research for a long time. And I think that promise has been there 5 years away all the time. My experience is that database information is largely rubbish, if I can put it in one word, and that there's an awful lot talked about how people will use it and how it could be used, but actually delivering on that promise still seems to be several years away. And I just wonder whether anyone had any great news for me in the fact that it would actually happen, or it is actually happening.
Anyone like to comment on that? No? Richard, you about databases?
Well, it happens. It's definitely happening.
It's
You may just not be in contact with the companies where it's certainly happening, but there's a whole host of companies that are making better use of customer loyalty card data, scheme data. I think in many ways it's sometimes the software that struggle to keep up, and there's definitely a shortage of analytical skills out there as well to be able to mine the data. There's enough data out there.
So I know there's data, yes. My question was really more about whether that data is of a quality to support what it's supposed to be supporting.
I guess we can only talk for the organisations which we're involved
But
with.
Richard, your view is that there's bound to be major advancements.
So the question was in 5 years'
area.
time, where do we think we'll be?
Yeah.
I doubt there'll be more use made of customer databases, whether the data is of quality. I'm sure for some people it will be, some of it less, but I can't see that being anything other than
Right, okay. Final sort of future gazing style question. This one comes from Alan Love. What characteristics of the panel think would be appropriate for a new graduate looking to launch a career in market research? So, have things changed? What qualities does that person, that individual, increasingly need?
I think Richard's just touched on it in terms of analytical skills. You've got to be able to bring together data from multitude of different sources, be it transactional, customer data, or quantitative data, or qualitative research. I think from a client perspective, I don't look at the industry as being the research industry. You get insight from lots of different sources. But in terms of the characteristics, I mean, the sorts of things that I jotted down here: creativity, you've got to be consultative. We were talking earlier about management consultants. You've got to have that ability to communicate and to influence. You've got to be open. You've got to be intuitive in terms of the hypotheses you would start with at brief stage before you've even conducted a single interview. And I would say probably in terms of skills, learn languages as well, because as the point was made earlier in terms of putting together data from lots of different countries. So lots of general management type skills as well as analytical insight skills, communication, consultation. And
So it's a broader skill set, perhaps one that's looked for. In particular analytical. Okay. Anyone want to add to that, Richard? What
What words would I say? I think people need to be good detectives. It's a good skill to have, to be curious in everything that you do, to always want to try and get to the bottom of issues. I think having an open mind, like you touched on that earlier on, to always be open to new things that customers are saying. I think to be switched on commercially, which might be the easiest thing for younger people to be, but as quickly you pick up, you need to understand how businesses work. And to be able to turn percentages into pounds will get inside people a lot further down the line. And given what we're doing today, empower networking as well as be used by people younger in the career. Certainly I didn't appreciate the benefits of networking until I was quite a few years into my career. And I wish I'd probably started doing it earlier, to be fair. So those would be a series of things I think would be good to pass on.
Very good.
I'd one to that list of storytelling, which is clearly what you two definitely do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. There's a few odd ones. Common sense. It's quite a useful thing to start with when you come into research, and sometimes it's missing.
Not always a given with young people.
No, not necessarily, yeah. Discipline. It sounds awful. But actually being able to deliver on time is not, again, something that comes naturally to many of us when you first start a job. Curiosity, stamina, flexible mind, all that. I mean, usual things that you would literacy, being able to pen a decent report if you could do it. I mean, that takes, I mean, I remember we had very, very bright people coming from very good universities, but it was an era when they weren't taught to write. And they learnt very quickly because they were very bright, but it took some time. So being able to write in a sort of commonsensical way, in an easy to read way is quite important.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Yeah, I think I'd say curiosity, and every time you walk past a door, not to be able to resist peeping through the keyhole. And I think also, and I think also the ability to be able to bring drama to the everyday life, so that you can take the drama of everyday life back to your client. Because I think, in a sense, that's what we really, I think qualitative research is, we're largely dealing with the everyday situation that, zillions of people are confronting or dealing with. And we have to be able to find, and I think you therefore need a real kind of passion and empathy with the people you're talking with, to be able to bring their dramas and bring that back to your clients.
And I think it's only when you look back at the variety of people that we've got to meet throughout all our working lives, it's quite extraordinary. Sort of prisoners one day, and then it's sort of mums looking after kids the next. It's an enormous spectrum of people that you have to adapt to. So being able to adapt to all that huge variety with very little time or space to do it. You have to go in there and you have to do it instinctively. Know what words to use, how to phrase it, all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to take that for granted, but they're hugely sort of difficult skills in a sense.
But a fantastic privilege. I think qualitative research would be the very, if you're interested in people, what better job? And that's why I'm really still banging that drum, because I want to see it survive. And I wonder if it will.
Okay, thank you, Michael. We've just got 3 or 4 minutes left before we need to go. Would anyone like to ask a question of the panel out in the audience there? Yes, hi, Matt.
Rob Marcus, recent member. Really, sort of to build on some of the stuff we said here, I was surprised not to hear just now in the list of things, qualities that might be required. I think what was touched on maybe is presentation skills, because so much of what we do, as you say, is really exciting. We get very excited. We're right there listening to what people are saying, capturing it, and yet you can't get marketing directors to the meetings. We've heard people don't want to turn up, and that's because the presentation back of this exciting stuff gets diluted into some
I did hear storytelling though.
Yeah, so yes, there is a story to be told, but there is a skill in telling that story.
Okay. Absolutely.
That has not been specifically mentioned, I think is a missed opportunity, and that's why so many people don't want to turn up to the meetings perhaps, or wait for, because you're having to tell, you're the one that heard it, not them. Somehow you've got to convey that immediacy and excitement to a group that didn't meet that person.
Thank you, Robert.
I think you're absolutely right. I know I'm whether I use the word guilty or not, I have phoned up agencies to see if a particular person is available, and if they said no, they're not available, but another person within that same agency is available, and I know that the one I called for is the storyteller who can present gravitas, you know, being able to communicate, and the other person can't, I'll go to the next agency. You know, so it's down to individuals. It's not about agency, as you said. It's people business, and I'll choose people who I know will be able to present at the end of it. I take all the rest of it, the middle stuff, talking to customers and running the groups. I take that as a given. But if I can't put them in front of the stakeholder to be called, I say communication, consultation, storytelling. Ultimately, yeah, that's presentation. If you can't do that, then you've lost your audience. So I totally agree with that.
Very good. And final comment here. Yeah.
I'm coming at it from a slightly different point of view. I run a small fieldwork agency, and you've talked about your chartered having standards. From our end of the business, what would really be helpful is to have standards that across the board, that user to a degree where possible all coming from the one direction. One of the big difficulties we have, there's a lot to talk about professional respondents, repeat respondents. What horrifies as someone running a field agency with the responsibility of actually delivering good quality respondents for people like yourselves is the fact that there is so much confusion and lack of consistency in what's coming at us. I have heard researchers say, oh, I don't mind repeat respondents, so because in front of the client that's good, they know what they have to do. We have others who you've got to have virgin response, 80% of your groups have got to be virgin. It's just so confused.
So your plea really is for a tightening of standards also.
If you're going to set standards coming at it, chartered, accredited, whatever, that you set you set the build that into the standards.
Great.
That this is what should it be.
All right. Thank you.
Is it something to do with transparency? Because often there will be reasons for, there might be reasons for having repeat people, and other times not. But it's being upfront about what it is you're delivering, in a sense. As that if we ask for something and you agree, then it's upfront and it's transparent. But
there has to be flexibility.
But
in the same light, it's very difficult as someone who's running a fieldwork agency and trying to deliver quality, when I have recruiters coming and saying, oh, well, the last client I worked for,
right,
sure,
the if you aim for this, you get that.
Yeah, no,
so I'm a great fit. You have to aim hard, and that's where, if it was across the board, that you were, that a moderator today will be coming at it from the same, where possible.
All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was just really good hearing people who spent a lot of time in focus groups and so on, actually reflecting on the industry and where it's going, and giving that perspective as well, and saying, oh, we were thinking about this 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So yeah, it's really good. And the funny stories as well. I think we have a good industry for funny stories.
Interesting questions, good panel, enjoyed it a great deal.
Very interesting, really lively debates, quite optimistic, not too boring. I thought it was very interesting, very enlightening, and I thought it was actually better than I expected it was going to be. So interesting, and I liked the focus on the future in the questions, especially the second half. So that was really nice, and I think we ended up talking very much about what will happen to our industry, and also from the client side. So all of that was very good.
It was really interesting being on the panel. I mean, it's nice with a bunch of people with some good questions, and so it was good fun actually.
I thought it was very interesting discussion, lively panel. I think some of the issues were discussed are quantitative as well as qualitative, but it was good fun and I was lovely.
I thought it was really good. I particularly enjoyed the responses from the clients. there seems to be an interesting difference between the different ways that different clients get involved with insight. And I was particularly interested in this perennial problem of clients not being able to get the insight higher up the organisation. So it was interesting to hear that debate.
First time doing ICG events. Very enjoyable. Glad I came over.
You should definitely come again.